So I guess I'll quickly begin. I'll just introduce myself, and then I'll pass it on over to Rebecca, where she can start the her webinar soon. Okay, so my name is Jasmine Wilson, and I come from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, or Musqueam, Squamish, and the Kwakwaka'wakw territory as well. I am the Indigenous Programs and Community Engagement Coordinator here at the Museum of Vancouver. So I'd just like to welcome you virtually to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. It's on the ancestral unceded territory. And I have the pleasure of introducing Rebecca Lyon here. She is a Anishinaabe designer of mixed Lebanese and Ojibwe descent. She is currently pursuing her PhD at Trent University and looking at the impact of regalia, fashion, and design on Indigenous identity. She also founded the Powwow Jackets in May 2020. Her jacket right now is actually on display at the Museum of Vancouver. It is titled No More Stolen Sisters. So it is on display until the end of June. It's for Indigenous Month. Sorry, I'm a little flustered right now. So before we begin, I just wanted to let everyone to know that we actually offer closed captions to anyone that needs it. So it's just at the bottom if you click on it. And then we're also recording this webinar, so it'll be available soon eventually on YouTube. So I'll just pass it on over to Rebecca.
Ani, everyone, and good morning or good afternoon, depending where you're from. Ani Bojo, Niji Bumadzig, Rebecca Nadishnagas, Ogani Wabigwankwe, Nindigo Anishinaabe Moen, Wabajaji Nadodem, North Payne Natonchi, Nogojawaning Michi Sagig Territory Onchi Nadao, Powwow Jackets, Trent University, First Nations Technical Institute, meanwhile Humber College, Nindanoki. My name is Rebecca. My Anishinaabe name is Pink Rose Woman. I'm originally from North Bay, but I grew up on the shores of Georgian Bay. I currently live in Michi-Sagig territory, so it's just a little east of Peterborough. And I founded Powwow Jackets. I work for Trent University, First Nations Technical Institute, and the Humber College. So as I was getting ready for everyone to come in, I was doing a smudge. And that's how we like to start things in our culture, so that we can go in a good way to cleanse everything, cleanse our eyes, cleanse our mouth, cleanse our ears, cleanse our minds, so we can go forward in a good way. And the other thing that we will do is say a small prayer. So I'm going to do that now in the language, and forgive me as I tongue tie myself over the words. It's been a while. Iu name winan, maba asima, minwa noda winan, gida bagid magam. Migrech gida igam, nimishomis nanig. Meanwhile, nokomis inanig, jinago ga iajig. Nongom iajik, meanwhile wabang iajik. Migrech nan manadog iajik, nudong iajik, nibing iajik, shkodeng, meanwhile iajik akin. Miigwech manadog iajik giwe danong, wabanong, rawanong, meanwhile ipanginishmok. Daga biwadu ga washanong, we mino bimadziyang. Miigwech, 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 miigwech. Aha. So we do that just to thank Creator and to make sure that we're honoring all of the sacred beings and spirits, our ancestors, and all of the things on earth, so that we can be at balance with them. So today I'm really going to talk a lot about myself, because we're talking about culture and identity, and that's really about who you are, where you come from, what you've learned, and inherently as an Indigenous person, those things are all connected. They come back to the land, they come back to our teachings and what we've been taught. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself. We're also going to talk a little bit about Powwow Jackets and the jackets that's on display and kind of how those things come together. And I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully it works. Here we go. All right. So this is yours truly. And as Jasmine said, I'm Anishinaabe Kwe, mixed of Ojibwe and Lebanese, Scottish descent. So I have quite an interesting culture and identity mix. And I'm going to talk a little bit about where I come from, the people that are my ancestors and how they've influenced what I do and who I am as a person. So on the left here is my grandfather on my mother's side. And on the right here, this is my great-grandfather in Parry Sound, Ontario, which is where I grew up. These two men have really big influential parts of my life. My grandfather, because he was my last connection to who I was and as an Indigenous person, he passed away not too long ago. And my great-grandfather, because he came here from overseas, he settled here in Ontario. And that's how my family came to be. Without that side of my family, we wouldn't be here. In the middle here is my grandmother and my grandfather on their wedding day. This is my grandmother, who, I'll try not to get emotional, but was a very influential person for me. She basically raised me. I spent a lot of time with her, and she really taught me how to be a person and how to be kind, how to do things with a sense of humor and not to be negative. This is her as well. Here in the middle is my grandfather, who is also very influential to me. He's on the Lebanese side. And that's a large fish, as you can see. My grandfather spoiled me rotten, kind of made me who I am, which is a little bit spoiled, but also very proud of who I am. He is Lebanese, very much looked Lebanese, my father as well. And this is my mother. My mother is Ojibwe and Scottish. And I'm very close with my family, so I'm very close with my mom. And this is the matrilineal side of my family. On the far left is my aunt, my mom in the blue sunglasses, and my cousin in the middle, and my grandmother in the middle there. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really know these people that well other than my mother. My mother left home when she was quite young. She doesn't know a lot about where she comes from. She knows she's Ojibwe. She knows that she's Scottish, but she doesn't know a lot about the teachings. She doesn't know the language. She doesn't know much about where we came from. And I don't have a connection with my aunt at all. And my grandmother passed recently as well. And I didn't know her very well. This is my father and me as a fat, chubby baby. My dad is very influential. We're very close. We're pretty much the exact same human being. We have the same personalities, and we butt heads a lot, but we're very close. We're both very stubborn, and we both like pushing each other's buttons and arguing with each other, but all in good fun. And this is me and my dad. Sometimes we wear matching outfits, apparently. And my mom and my sister as young kids. Here's my sister again. And I want to stop and talk a little bit about my sister, because my sister is my best friend. And her story has kind of also become my story in a lot of ways. So my sister has a different father than I. He is Indigenous from Wikwemkwaan Unceded First Nation. And so my sister is a member of Wikwemkwaan First Nation, where my family comes from, Nipissing. My sister didn't have her father growing up. And so she doesn't really have a lot of the connections to culture, land, and language. And I've been the one to actually teach her about her culture, because I am so privileged to have the opportunity to learn the language, to learn things about myself, to research, to have the ability to access databases and people connections. I'm very lucky in that where I go to university, there's a lot of people from Wikwemkwaan First Nation. I work with a few of them, like Elder Shirley Williams, Liz Ozamick, Edna Manitowabi, And I've been able to find her family members and help her find out where she comes from. This is a illustration that I made for my PhD, and this is really what we're talking about. And this is a melding of all of the things that is me. So it's the Canadian flag with the words for half-breed on the sides there in Ojibwe, and cedar in the middle, which represents being Lebanese. It's also a sacred medicine for us as Indigenous people. And I mentioned I am of the Martin clan, so I'm a warrior, hunter, gatherer, and a protector, and I take that very seriously. As mixed Indigenous people, we're often adopted into the Martin clan to protect and to be warriors for our people. And I see myself as that. I have been taught that I have the ability to stand up, to speak, to use my voice, because I have that ability to reach people, to teach, and to also show people truths. And in that way, that's really what being a warrior is. So yeah, very proud to be Wabajaji Nadodam, Martin clan. And this is the Lion clan crest. This is the Scottish crest. I actually recently found out about this, and I find it really interesting because the woman in the middle, she's holding a thistle, and my name is Pink Rose Woman, and flowers, plants have really been spiritual helpers for me. And when I found this crest with the bay leaves and the thistle, I thought, wow, like those things are not coincidental. Like they really make up who you are. And that's what we're taught, especially when it comes to things like blood memory, which is those drops of Indigenous blood. It's an awakening of who we are. And when I see this, it awakens memory in me of who I am, that Scottish ancestry, that clan ancestry. And in fact, a lot of Scottish clan history is very similar to Indigenous history. And I have been told, although I don't know for sure, that there are some ancient languages that really are similar to some of our Indigenous languages. If that's true, amazing, and I would love to know more about that. And another really important aspect of my life is the fact that I grew up on the shores of Georgian Bay. And this is an illustration that I created of Mishu Bishu, which is one of our sacred water beings. And I was told a story about how Mishu Bishu lives in the water of Georgian Bay. And Georgian Bay is really where my home is. Although I'm originally from Nipissing area, Salter Lake, which we'll talk about in a second, Georgian Bay is where my heart lives. And it's a very special, sacred place for me. That's where I really learned about what it was to be Indigenous, not just myself, but living around Indigenous people and culture in Northern Ontario. I was very lucky to have that, whereas in more urban settings, that's not necessarily something that you have access to. So that little red dot there, that's Salter Lake. That's where my mother's family all comes from. On the left here, you'll see West Nipissing all the way up to Tilden Lake. That's all Nipissing territory. And I was told that our family comes from the Nipissing First Nation tribe. And I originally grew up in Redbridge, which is just down from that little red dot. All of my mother's family was in Salter Lake, but we moved down to Redbridge. And then when I was about 6, I believe, we moved to Parry Sound, Ontario, which is why I have such a special place in my heart for Georgian Bay. So I'll talk a little bit about the jackets and how they kind of meld into these things. So as I kind of talked about, there's really 2 sides to me. There's this Indigenous side, there's this Lebanese and Scottish side. I'm very traditional, but I also acknowledge that I'm not in a lot of ways. And so I was taught that your dreams are very precious. Creator sends you messages in your dreams, and you need to pay attention to that. And so I actually had a dream about powwow jackets before I created it, about being at a powwow and wearing this jacket. I don't dance. I don't do anything like that. I love the regalia, but I think I'm a little too shy and awkward to dance, and I was never taught it. So I've never got that chance to do that, but I love the regalia so much. And so I dreamed up this jacket. I'm a jacket person. I love them. I collect them. And it was like a fancy shawl dancer, like a ribbon shirt, but streetwear. And I could wear it off to the side, not be the center of attention in the dance circle, but I could really show who I was and shout out, you know, that I am Indigenous and that I want to show my pride of that with this jacket. And so the next day I went out and made my first jacket. And my jacket has my name on it. It's pink to represent Pink Rose Woman. And it's really a vision of who I am. And this is one of jackets I made for a customer. I'll go through a couple of them. As you can see, they're like completely customizable. So they really are an indication of who people are. They want their colors, they want their spirit colors, they want their name. They're kind of like water as well. They flow. Water is very important to me as I come from the water people. Nipissing First Nation is the people of the lake. And they kind of flow off of the jacket like a waterfall. But they're also very non-traditional. As you can see, you can wear them in a photo shoot with leather pants and look like a badass. And this is my niece. She's really cute. This is a Mi'kmaq jacket with the Mi'kmaq flag. This is a jacket someone requested their two-spirit and wanted the rainbow flag. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the jacket that's in the museum. So the jacket that's in the museum, which is this picture here, is extremely personal to me. It's a really, I poured my heart and soul and who I am into that. It's a lot of teachings in this jacket. And I apologize if I get emotional. And I just want to say, as a trigger warning, I will be talking a little bit about abuse, missing and murdered Indigenous women, etc. So the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirit issue is very close to my heart. Someone in our family is missing and has been missing for quite some time. And it affected me deeply, and it's someone on my sister's side. And it really bothered me as a university student that I was going to university and I was trying to, you know, fight the power, and I was trying to really reconnect with my Indigenous roots and find out who I was while I already had someone missing my family and I was not doing anything. There wasn't anything I could do, but it was really, it was a struggle for me, and it is still a struggle. And every woman on my mother's side has been impacted by abuse, domestic violence, and sexual assault. And that's not a coincidence. It's really touches, I would say, almost every single Indigenous woman, Indigenous family in some way. And so someone reached out to me from the Women's Center, Downtown Eastside Women's Center in Vancouver, about making a jacket for auction. And of course I said yes, because I always say yes. And I dreamed up this jacket. And while I was making this jacket, I was going through a pretty serious domestic violence and domestic assault situation myself. I was sexually assaulted and abused by a former partner and stalked by a former partner, and was really in the thick of it for quite a long time. And still, it's still a bit of a problem, but for about 2 years. And while I was making this jacket, it was pouring my teachings and who I am into it to clear myself of that energy, but to make something that was beautiful, something that could be accessible for people that people can see and feel the power. And that's why this hand is on the back. It's always there. There's something always there, even though it's quite beautiful without it. As you can see, it's just a gorgeous jacket. It's really long. The red is specifically placed to kind of show where the spirit lies in the arms and the back, kind of shooting out of the person who's wearing it. And we're taught that the colors, so red, black, white, and yellow, are very sacred in the medicine wheel, and we use them specifically to kind of tell a story as Indigenous people. And I think that this jacket really tells a story with the red and the black and the white. And this is the jacket in the museum. And this is the jacket that I've most recently made. It represents the 215 children that were found in Kamloops. It has 215 crosses in the orange and the white to represent our Indigenous children. And these jackets are very deeply personal, and they really show, I think, emotion, but they're also a representation of our culture and who we are as Indigenous people. And as you can see, I put a lot of myself into them. I think deeply about them and where I come from. And so what I want to talk about culture and identity is like that we're so inherently linked to who we are, that these little things influence all of the things that we create and that we do. And that's what we're taught. Like I said, with the Scottish crest, you know, I had no idea that crest existed and that it had a flower in it. It represents my spirit helpers. And it represents me and my family. And for Indigenous people, when we talk about culture and identity, it really comes back to the land and access to the land, using our medicines, using our teachings in really thoughtful ways. And I think for me, it was a struggle because I was not taught my entire life about that. I knew, but I didn't really know. My mom doesn't like to talk about where she comes from. Still, she is not comfortable, really. She'll talk a little bit, but she doesn't know a lot. And so it was really up to me to find out more about where we came from through the tidbits that she gave us, and then find those elders, find those people, find people who had the language, find the knowledge, and so that I could find who I was. And that's what identity is. Sometimes you're not just born with who you are, it's about the growth. And we forget that sometimes as people. I think we sometimes forget that it's a process. And so I started to go on this journey of finding out all of our teachings, more about ourselves, and not just my Indigenous side, but, you know, asking my aunts who have attended today about where we come from, about the Lebanese side, which is what I grew up with. I grew up with the food. I grew up with that culture more than the Indigenous side. It was not until I was a young adult that I was really able to kind of come into that. And when I was able to get those teachings, is when I really began to find out who I was. And that was doing things on the land and accessing medicines on the land, the teachings on the land. I think something really sacred and something really beautiful for me is in a memory was my first day of my PhD program. A dear friend of mine who's in the PhD program and I were paired up in a boat, and we were harvesting monoman rice. And we'd never met before, and it was just kind of like here you go, get off and do your thing for the next couple hours, and I hope you like it. And it was just really beautiful being able to harvest traditional food in a traditional way with the sticks out on Emily Creek here near Peterborough, Ontario. And that day, I remember just, it really changed my life. I found a dear friend, a brother, but it also made me realize how important it is to access land and to access traditional ways of knowing, and really think deeply about what we're doing and why we're doing it, why it's important to keep tradition alive and make it your own as well. Because not everyone is going to do the same thing the same way. And that's really how Powwow Jackets kind of came to be. I wanted to take traditional aspects and who I was and what I knew, my abilities, and make them into something new and fresh for everybody. And it started out as something that I thought would be for trade. Just trading for earrings, because I love earrings, beaded earrings and all that. I have an addiction to buying people's artwork, as you can see. And it kind of exploded from there and became this business. And with that business, I got a new relationship with my sister because my sister helps me now. She's an artist and she's reconnected with beading and found a lot of herself through the business. And that's really helped me shape who I am and her as well, and then grow together. And that's been a huge thing in my life in the last year or so since I created Powwow Jackets. It's been just unbelievable how much you learn through this and the connections you make with people when you have something like this. And that's a huge teaching. And something that I always carry with me in my bundle is relationship, the importance of relationship. And that means with everything and everyone. When it comes back to the land, it comes back to your relationship with the land. It comes back to your relationship with people, with your partner, with your medicines, with your teachings, and how do you carry those relationships? And as I have grown in my own identity and finding out more about myself, my relationships have strengthened and I've healed from those traumas. And they were pretty severe traumas that I was experiencing. But I was able to use the teachings and to use the things that I was given for my bundle. You know, what I take with me. Our bundle is what we take with us. To heal and to find a better relationship with myself and to know more about who I am. And I think going forward, when we talk about culture and identity, we have to be, you know, strong in that we're going about it in a good way. Mino b'madzwin, living the good life in a good way. Being true to oneself, seeking truth and balance. And that's another teaching that I also carry with me is balance, the importance of balance in my life. I go back to the medicine wheel where we're talking about the mental, the spiritual, emotional, and physical, and always balancing those things to make sure that we're good. So that when we're doing something and we're going forward with something, we're doing it in a good way with balance. Because if you have one of those things off, you're not quite right. You got to get them all together. You need to be feeding all of them and keeping them all healthy to be a good human, essentially. And for our culture, that's something that's really important. And I think right now is a struggle, obviously, with everything that's going on. I mean, we're collectively grieving. So our emotions are heightened, and it's tough. I know it's really tough for me right now. I think I feel very emotional. I feel sad because there's a loss of obviously of actual human beings, but the loss of the knowledge that we should be keeping as Indigenous people, that those families deserve. That's such an integral part of the culture that is lost. And that is just heartbreaking. And I think about myself a little bit selfishly. I think about the loss of language and knowledge in my own family because of the shame of being Indigenous that was brought onto my family. It was not talked about. It was a negative thing. And there was trauma there. The relationship between my great grandmother and my mother was a negative one, because there was trauma. And so she never got that connection. And so I didn't get that connection. I had to find it. I had to root around for it. And only because I wanted to find that aspect of the culture and that aspect of who I was I able to. If you don't have the skills or the know-how, how will you actually know yourself? Is a question, really. So I grieve for the loss of that knowledge and those languages, those really amazing languages, and just those families having a connection and the relationship, which it comes back to the loss of relationship between people and the loss of relationship between those knowledges being severed. And it's really important to think about our identity in those ways, is that there is a relationship between all of our phases of ourself and all of the knowledges that we're gathering as we move along, the things that we're putting in our bundle, the lessons, the teachings from our elders, from our knowledge keepers, and to pay attention to those things. And for me, what has kept me on that path is creating powwow jackets and creating art, creating in general, to be perfectly honest, melding the traditional with the new, streetwear and traditional regalia, melding the two parts of who I am, the Indigenous and the non-Indigenous side, and creating something that really represents who I am and something that I can be proud of, because we should be proud as people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. But as an Indigenous person, I am very proud to say that I am. I'm going to break the cycle of shame in my family and be proud to do that. Create something that people can see, and celebrate. And that's why it's such an honor to have my jacket in a museum, because it's something that can be celebrated by other people, enjoyed by other people, and make people think as well, because it comes with a message. And to be Indigenous is inherently political. And so everything we do is in some way, shape, or form political. That's not necessarily by choice, but it's the truth. And so my identity is political. Being born was political. And I think, therefore, my art and my identity is shaped around that. There's always a question, there's always a message, there's always something that goes along with it. It's to make people stop. That's why these jackets are so, as I call them, extra. I want people to look upon them and stop and be like, whoa, because you should take notice of what we're doing. We're Indigenous people and we're proud, with our ribbons and our colors, our names on the back or on the front, our animals, our keepers, our helpers, representing them. And so the jacket kind of flips the white gaze to really stop and think about what is going on with this jacket and what's the story. And for me, as a mixed person, I'm constantly dancing between those two things. And it's been interesting to balance both of them. I feel like there's always a certain level of guilt that I'm carrying as a non-Indigenous aspect of my life, and then the being very proud with the Indigenous side. It's a burden in a way to carry both of those things, but one that I'm happy to carry. And I carry for my family, and will happily carry that for them as long as I live. And so that my sister, my nephews, and my continuing family will be proud of who they are and will actually know where they come from. I'm the person who is going to start that story, stop the cycle of abuse, and change the story of shame, and make sure that the culture and identity lives on, and we're passing it on. And as Indigenous people, that's something that we're also taught to do, is to continue on the knowledge and the stories, the teaching, the language, most importantly, continue those things on. And make sure that they continue to live, because they're very much alive, but it's our responsibility and our way of keeping ourselves true to Aki, Mother Earth, and true to ourselves, is by keeping that culture alive and that language alive. Yeah, how? My gosh, I think that's all I have to say. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I'll give people some time to write any questions out in the chat box, but I just wanted to thank you. I personally don't have a question, but a comment. You know, I'm mixed descent as well. I'm also Italian and Native Hawaiian. And coming from so many nations and coming from two territories, it was hard to find identity, but as I'm getting older, I'm accepting all of them and loving it, and also loving the fact that I am Italian and Hawaiian and appreciating every aspect of who I am, and also working on myself. And especially with everything that's happening in the news with residential schools and it coming up, it's a conversation that my whole family is having now, and it's the healing process. And so I just wanted to put my little 2 cents in there. So thank you for having this dialogue with everybody and seeing all the comments in the chat box. I don't know if you were reading them as you're going along, but everyone is just so appreciative of what you're talking about, and talking about your jacket that's at the museum and how beautiful it is. I highly recommend, if you're in Vancouver, to go check it out. It is free for Indigenous people to get into the museum. You just have to go online to book a ticket. But yeah, I will leave that there. I think we have one comment. Oh, question there too as well. May I ask what the word is for living the good life you used?
Mino Bemadzuin. Mino Bemadzuin, the good life. It's really like a way of living. It's not just a word, right? It's like it's a way to go in a good way. Mino Bemadzuin. And thank you everyone for your lovely comments. I really appreciate it. So a goal of mine is to actually get into Indigenous Fashion Week. I have applied. I don't know. I'm not sure if it will or not, because it is just jackets. So I don't know if that's something they would want, but I would love to to do Indigenous Fashion Week. That would be a dream. I'd love to have my sister a part of that. She does a lot of beading, so it would be amazing. And I think obviously the jackets just are they're meant to move, obviously. So I think it would be great. It's so good, Joyce.
It would be, yeah. Somebody just said that they'd love for you to be in Indigenous Fashion Week, and I 100% agree. Sorry, we're just reading the comments right now. Yeah. Is there any other questions that you'd like to ask? I could also unmute you if you want to ask something personally. Just let me know. Just raise your hand and I could unmute you. And how long ago did you make the recent one for the Every Child Matters one?
That was the day the news hit. For me, the way that I am and the way I work with emotions, heavy ones, whether that's anger, happy, sad, whatever, is I just go into work mode and I have to do something. I need to do something to change, or I need to get out there, you know? And I felt so helpless. So I was like, all right, I'm going to make a jacket. I'm going to auction it off and I'm going to donate the proceeds. I have to do something. So I started that immediately and made that jacket and auctioned it off. And all the proceeds went to the Residential School Survivors Society. And I've been continuing that kind of theme. I do a lot of donation stuff on my website where stickers, all the proceeds go to different charities or organizations. I have one for the Residential School Survivors Society because I feel like we have to, everything has to come back to community. As Indigenous people, that's definitely a teaching, I think, across the board for Indigenous people. And I have to feel like I'm doing something. And if that's just putting some dollars into people's hands, at the very minimum, I'm going to do that as much as possible and do my community work. Yeah, and I would like to create another one as we go further because I know that we're going to continue having this news. I want to figure out how I can help more with that, maybe make more jackets. I don't know. But I know that I will definitely be driven to continue to make art as we continue down this like really tragic and horrible path right now.
Yeah, that was my next question, especially with the news that just broke out recently about the 751 unmarked graves that were found. It's just something that we all knew because the elders talked about it, the survivors talked about it, but just to have those numbers right there thrown in our face, it's just brings up a lot of emotion for sure. And I feel helpless myself with what I don't even know what to do except just wear a shirt and just acknowledge it and talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a
And
lot.
that's what you can do is talk about it, educate. But I think as Indigenous people, that's not necessarily our responsibility. That the responsibility really is on the allies right now as we collectively grieve. If you can, talk about it, that's amazing, but it's not our responsibility. And this is where, I think we're going to hopefully see some change. Hopefully, we're going to see the tides change. We're going to see movement. We're going to see a lot more of a changing of the relationship between Canada and Indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
If there is movement, which I think we will see some. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Me too. So there is somebody asking if you could post the link for your website on here so that they could check it out and save it for future reference.
Yes, I will.
Perfect. And we actually have another question from Joyce. Could you talk about future workshops for people interested in making a jacket or about how people can commission you if they are interested in having you make one?
Yeah, so if you would like one, you can go to my website, powwowjackets.com, and there's an option there to commission one. In regards to workshops, I believe we will be having one in August, and I can't remember the date. Jasmine, you might have to remind me.
Yes, the Museum of Vancouver is actually doing a free camp for Indigenous youth. So it's ages 14 to 18. So it runs for 5 days, August 16th to the 20th. So we got Becky to do one of the workshops for one of the days so they could learn how to make a powwow jacket. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be virtual too. So it'll be interesting. I can't wait for it. Are you doing any more at all, or have you been asked to?
I've definitely been asked and I want to do them. It's just about time. I'm very busy. I am still supposed to be doing my PhD and I'm trying to do as many things as possible. And also just about access, like trying to get all the materials to people. But honestly, I would love to do as many as possible. And especially with youth, that's such that cause, like youth are so close to my heart that I would love to do more of them if possible.
Same here. Just I never really had the opportunity to learn about my culture and learning traditions, and it's always been something. Now that I'm older, you know, I have the time to. I'm done school and I got a job and I have this free time, so it's being here at the museum. It gives me the opportunity to talk to artists and elders and learn from them. And my boss saw this opportunity when I was talking to him about doing this summer camp and getting elders to come in and artists to come in to teach the kids. And I think it's important. So they're getting that opportunity that some youth never had. So I'm all for doing these kind of things for youth as well.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, I would love that. And I'd love to make more jackets. I always open for orders because I love making them. I put a lot of my own blood, sweat, and tears into them and try to make them as special as possible. And a question I get a lot from people is, are they only for Indigenous people? And the answer is no. It's not regalia, so it can be for anybody. I think the key is to always just support Indigenous artists and not Native inspired or knockoffs or anything like that. And it's not a sacred item unless you would like it to be, in which that would be a discussion that we could talk about. But it's for everybody to enjoy. And I have auctioned some off, and non-Indigenous people have won them. My niece is non-Indigenous, and I've made her one. So they're for everybody to enjoy. And I hope they make people happy.
They're beautiful. I would definitely want one. I have to take a look at the website and
Yes.
maybe I'll get one commissioned.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be extra and just like flow with your ribbons, you got to get one.
Stand out in the crowd.
Yeah.
Not too much, It's beautiful. So yeah, we just have a comment. Amazing presentation. Thank you for making space for me to witness and to learn. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
Oh,
My aunt has one. Of course.
I'm jealous. I'd love to see it. Yeah, I don't think there's any other questions, but I just wanted to again thank you for doing this with us and for allowing this jacket to be on display at the Museum of Vancouver. I get to see it every morning when I go into the office. It's the first thing I see when I walk in. So it's always just a reminder, and it's just beautiful to look at. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone for coming and listening to me ramble on for an hour. I really appreciate it.
No, you did a fantastic job, and it's a conversation I think we need to start having now and today. So thank you. And thank you to everybody for joining. Again, it will be posted shortly online, so you could view it on YouTube as well. So thank you so much. Have a good day.
You watch everyone. Thumb up, please.